Is love really all we need? Welcome back to another intriguing episode of Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. Today, we journey through the complexities of consciousness and the profound power of unconditional love. I am honored today to share my deep conversation with my good friend and intuitive counselor, Shiro Nobunaga. As an intuitive counselor, Shiro has served for 12 years helping clients write their divine story and awaken their own inner divinity for self-empowerment and spiritual wisdom. With a background as a musician and a self-acknowledged empath, Shiro shares insights into the interconnectedness of spirituality, personal growth, and he urges us to reflect on how we view life's challenges and joys, providing tools and perspectives to cultivate unconditional love as the foundation of all. Let's get into it. Welcome to Star Potential, a podcast where we explore the meaning of our existence while having a few laughs and sometimes tears through stories from the road of life. I'm your host, Julie Jo Hughes. As a stage performer, my life is quite literally about song and dance. I believe that life here on Earth is a playground for discovery, not a contest to be won. We ask questions together like, how do I evolve my consciousness? And how do you sing a passionate ballad when there's an old guy in the front row with his balls showing? True story. Stick around for these fun conversations. Hello, Shiro, my friend.
Hi.
It's such a pleasure to have you on Star Potential. It definitely feels like kind of a full circle moment for me. You are such a mentor in my life, and I can't wait to tell our listeners a little tidbit about some of our like introductory stories. But I wonder if, do you get this a lot? Do people tell you that they had some kind of a divine pull to talk to you, or they felt like they've known you before? Is that something that, as an intuitive counselor, do you find that you draw people to you that also recognize that they were drawn to you?
I do feel that, and this is probably a common quality for all empaths, but, I've always had people come to me for counsel, like even
Mm,
if from middle school.
mm.
Um, you know, the girl that I had the crush on would come to me about her problems with her boyfriend. And, you know, when I was teaching music, my private lessons with the students always ended up being about their life problems that I was counseling them on and not about the song that they're supposed to learn. And of course, strangers always coming up and talking to me and ending up sharing their pain and their wound. So yeah, and then even with my clients in my clientele, which is interesting, I've watched the clientele evolve, the kinds of clientele that I meet evolve along with my evolution, which so I
Mm,
always consider them a mirror of mine. But
mm.
now a lot of my clients come and I say, how did you find me? And they always say, I found you on Yelp, but there was something that told me I need to come see you kind of thing.
Mm,
And so I always appreciate now meeting more people that are in tune with their own inner guidance. But yeah, it seems like, and it makes sense. But yeah, I think it's very natural for what they call empaths or intuitives or light workers or however you want to call it, to
mhm.
have that magnetic energy to attract people that wants to resonate. And that's really what I feel is the bulk of my role is to just hold that space.
Mm. It does seem to come very naturally to you, and I think that's these guiding stars and the universe as we are drawn to that warmth, that energy. There is a sense of that there's a radiation coming from the higher vibe people, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we don't really know why, but we feel drawn. It's like the fly or, the moth is drawn to the light. It's like, I can't help it. I just need to be around you. And that's what I think it was our second gig together that I just kept feeling like, he's gonna think you're a weirdo. Like, why do you want to say that? And I felt like I had to say it. And I told you, you're gonna think this is really strange. I don't know. I feel like something really strong is telling me I just need to spend more time with you. I don't know if I'm just supposed to hang out with you. I don't know. I don't if you never want me for another gig again, that's fine. But can we go to coffee or something? Because it feels like something divine is telling me like I
Yeah.
have things to learn from you.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that you were not just playing music. And then you handed me this card. I said, "Well, you know what else I do?" And it said guided solution. And I went home and was like, "What does this even mean?" You know? You definitely,
Yeah.
cracked open, like, a new portal for me, and so,
Mm.
you've sent me, I feel like, on many rabbit holes of self-exploration in all the best ways.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah. That's the best thing to hear. Absolutely. Thank you very much for that.
Yes. As someone who does a lot of work, and you say that a lot of times you feel like your clients, like they're kind of growing with you, or whatever you're going through, they tend to be kind of a mirror for you, or it helps you reflect. And I feel like that's probably kind of what we're all doing. It's just that
Mhm.
maybe you're at a higher vantage point that you're noticing it maybe better or more quickly than some of us who haven't noticed that pattern before.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
But would you say that we are all attracting the people that are kind of at the level that we need at that point?
Oh yeah, for me, for a long time, I think spirituality or metaphysics or even quantum physics was very shrouded in the religious lingo.
Mhm.
And when I came out of that, and when I first understood that everything that I understood things spiritually was all semantics to what everything was energetically, vibrationally, like Nikola Tesla is saying, you'll understand the mystery of the universe if you see everything through, from energy and vibration and frequency. It
Mhm.
just made sense to me. It just connected the dots for me. And now that I understand and now I am aware of it, it makes it more and more apparent. But it is that nothing enters our reality without resonance. And in the end, everything that enters our reality has a reason and purpose for us. I realize it's a very self centered life, right?
Mm.
It not in a self serving way, but it
Mhm.
is that our reality is a very selfish journey. And the more we see ourselves, the more we are able to see everything outside of ourselves as the reflection that
Mm.
holds purpose for us. It's
Mm.
always for us. It's, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for us, or
Mhm.
life is responding to you. It's just that shift of paradigm helps me to see everything differently. It's like it inverted, right? Because we start with seeing as believing paradigm, outside in. And then once you start to see everything from inside out, then you can pick up on these things and you can see patterns and you can see that some people are in your life to play that antagonistic role just to stimulate something that you're not able to see for yourself until it
Mhm.
comes up to the surface. And then you can't help but to honor and be grateful even with the worst of the nemesis, right? um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, absolutely, I think that I can't see it working any other way,
Mhm.
because this is something that I always say. Like, I think that all of us operate on three basic operating systems. One, you believe that you're this just physical material and this is the only thing you have, the only life, and that everything happening in your life and around your life is just happening randomly and coincidentally. The second operating system is that you still believe that that's so, but you believe that there's something greater beyond you, something spiritual, something that is non-physical, non-visible, non-tangible. So that would be like religion and having a sense of superior being or higher force or whatever, but then
Mhm.
it's still ambiguous or it's guided by some kind of dogmatic belief that is already
Mhm.
established.
Mhm.
And then the third operating system is that you are God. You are the one that's creating this very reality. You are connected to the infinite of all that there is, that you are part of it, you're part of the web, or that you are the particle. However, everything, God is not just one, but that it resides in all things and you're part of it. And you
Mm-hmm.
have this sovereign and willing choice to be part of it. And you're the one that gave yourself the agenda. You're the one that gave yourself the purpose. You know, that's the only three identifiable, and there are in between ambiguous ones, right? In between, like a
Absolutely.
gradation. It's not a cut and dry black and
Mm-hmm.
white, three compartmentalized.
Mm-hmm.
And because even like atheists, I don't really actually count atheists, because atheist is in and of itself a nature of anti something. So it really doesn't qualify as an operating system, because operating system is what you're going with instead of what you're resistant to.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else falls in one of those three categories. And the more you identify with at least one of them, you can at least have your own sense of fulfillment in it, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
just say that if you're on category one, which is, they will call it three-dimensional paradigm, three-dimensional operating system believes that you're just this person. You don't believe in anything beyond this spiritual, but you may at least embrace that kindness is important or giving is important. And so with that, you still have some kind of fulfilled life and may pass with peace in your heart. Uh, Second, we'll call it 4D, four-dimensional operating system. You believe in God, like my mother, who is a devoted Christian, and
Mm-hmm.
she believes until the last breath that she takes that it's all about following Jesus, and then when I die, I'm going to meet Jesus and I'm going to be with him in heaven. And if that's and within that, if she truly experiences joy, qualities of joy or love
Mm-hmm.
or giving and blessing, whatever, then she can have a great life.
Mm-hmm.
But why not take the third one? Because in essence, nobody wants to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to be told what to do. And if we believed in God in the way that we believe in religion, we're still asking someone else's greater force, a
Mm-hmm.
permission, a sense of approval, or some sense of validation.
Mm-hmm.
And that never made sense to me.
Well, you're giving away a piece of your authority, right?
Yes,
It's and you're also giving away a piece of your responsibility, I feel like.
yeah, yeah, right. Because ultimately, it's someone else that's going to
Right.
judge your life,
Mm-hmm.
right?
It's like,
It's
well,
it's someone
it's not,
else's standard.
yeah, exactly. Somebody else is in charge, so what can I do?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's comfortable at times to ride
Yes.
on that. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, we're always designed to want to make our own choices and
Mm-hmm.
own that choice.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in church, it's always like, oh, that's great. Like, oh, no, it's not me, it's God, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, why would God insist that all credit goes to God if I'm his child, if I'm the child of God, and if in the Bible it says the kingdom of God is within you,
Mm-hmm.
then me receiving compliment or accolades or whatever is the divine accolade all in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, having ownership of all choices, all experiences, including all the painful ones,
Mm-hmm.
would make most sense,
Mm-hmm.
even if we were to define some kind of relationship between us and something greater than us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then, because if you think about the parent and child relationship, if
Yes.
the parent really loved the child, the one thing that the parent would wish for the child to have is their own unique signature life and their own sense of peace and happiness that can only be found by them and them only.
Absolutely. I don't want you
You
to do it
know?
because I told you to do it. I want you to do it because that's what you want to do, and that's what you learned from your own life
Yeah,
experiences.
yeah. Because I
Which,
went through a long period of time where I was in the music, but I left the church and I was playing in the rock and roll life,
Mm-hmm.
and always doubting it, this might not be God's will, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
And how much I have not been able to present with all the experiences that I've had, because in the back of my mind, I'm always afraid that I'm away from something greater's will for me,
Mm.
until I realized, like, oh no, I am the one that's attracting all of these experiences to me. And if it's, and it's trying to teach me, and it's me that have the choice, the sovereign choice to make my life suck, or to survive or to thrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I think I really came to that sense of alignment of who I am, and with that, this awareness became more and more refined for me.
Yes, yes. And then you definitely helped me walk through a lot of that as well. And we're able to then see how all of those choices that we did make, whether you were,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in debauchery or you were being good boy or
Right.
whatever you were doing, you were learning from each of those experiences, right?
Yeah.
And so to bring it back to you, it's interesting you brought up the parenting aspect there because I feel like a question I wanted to ask you about,
Mm-hmm.
we're taught God is love. And this is
Mm-hmm.
this is one that in religion I always had a lot of trouble with because if God is love, then how come supposedly he's saying this, which to me
Mm-hmm.
is not love? That seems like it's a condition. And
Right.
so we talk a lot about, is the love of a parent truly unconditional or is it conditional? And I think when it comes to human parents, that might depend on the person. But
Absolutely.
if we are talking about our connection to our creator, that can only be if God is love, then love is unconditional. So it would have to be an unconditional love. So first let's go down that line. Let's talk a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
how do we know the difference between love and
Mm-hmm.
that maybe has conditions or unconditional love. Like what is unconditional love?
So the best way to describe the difference will be, the way I describe that would be like using the difference between attachment and detachment. Oftentimes people look at attachment and detachment as sort of the paradigm of connection and disconnection, but they're not, that's not actually true. They're both connection, but attachment comes with connection with conditional love. Detachment comes with connection with unconditional love. Now, further defining that, what happens when we are attached to something that we love is that we have this idea of our own agenda, what we want it to be. When we become detached from the thing that we love, we look at it as the observer, the objective observer of the thing that we love.
Mm,
And so the question isn't, what do I want it to be, but what does it most need, or what is the best for this thing that I love, right?
mhm,
That's the difference in terms of the question that we would ask when we feel whatever action we have is from love, because it's both love. There's no doubt that conditional love isn't anything fake. It is
mhm.
still genuinely love,
Sure.
but it comes with this thread of our own attachment and our own narratives, right?
Mm,
For example, when we worry about our children's danger or threat, if we're not aware that we're projecting our own fear, our own experience or trauma that
mhm.
has not been processed within us, we continue to make that about the child, but we're just projecting. But it comes
Right.
from love still, because
Sure.
the motivator is what's incentivizing is still the care, the love.
Mm,
But when we are integrated within our own self of this part is my own fear, this
mhm,
is what then even if that is still part of the concern for the child, we can best communicate our concern along with always amplifying what is best for the child, right? And again, this is a challenge when the child has not developed their own ability or skill to make different choices and take action. And that's where a lot of parents struggle with, like, that part of it where they don't really know the difference, because the justification of, well, but they're just kids, so they don't know what they're doing. I got to tell them what to do. But that's the thing, is that it's the unconditional love. When it's there, it still observes even the child, because then we can see that the child, even in its early development stage, when you look at them as the soul that they are, then when you recognize that they already came with an agenda of their own, with a journey of their own, then you become observant as to what is their lessons that they wanted to learn, because that's already started from the moment that they're birthed into the environment, that parents that they chose to be born through. Everything is part of their own design. And so the detachment, the unconditional love state, will first put that honoring first, the honoring of that this child has their own signature and their own story that may, of course, come with lifetimes of accumulated agendas and stories and purpose. And then, you now position yourself. What is my role for this child? How can I best serve this child's best interest? That question comes from the state of the unconditional. That step back in and of itself to ask the question will be sign of unconditional love, whereas the conditional love will immediately go to, no, this child needs this. I want this child to do this, and this child cannot do this. It's bad or it's good, whatever. And there's no observation of where did that come from? Where did those standards and those methods come from? Because most of the time, we're still repeating programs that we've received from our parents and what we learned through our environment and dynamics.
Right. So yes, absolutely. So once we're feeling that deeper sense of kind of the difference between, am I attached or am I detached? Am I observing or am I lost in it? Then we can begin to understand, as we apply that love in our relationships. That could be just with a friend, right? The love you hold for a friend is like, I want what's best for you, and I also see like you're leading yourself into the ground here. I'm going to hold the space for you here. I'll interject if I need to, but ultimately, like, it's not my job to come in and fix your mess. It's just to kind of hold your hand as you're going through it, and hopefully you'll feel that genuine love and non-judgment from me to be able to make the decision that's best for yourself. So if we can apply that, I feel like sometimes it's easier to apply that understanding to a relationship first, and then we can begin to see, now, how do I apply that to myself? And this is really getting into the meat of what I feel like you can talk to us a bit about today. Is how do we have that kind of unconditional love for ourselves? Because sometimes the more we see, the more we want to judge, right? Like, what the hell is going on in there? Like, what are you doing? So how do we have that kind of love for ourselves?
Again, I think that once I started to see everything as within, so without. So then the way we love others are greatly hinging on how we love ourselves. And if we make loving ourselves the one pursuit, the ultimate pursuit, or the essence or the center of all, then everything else works along with that. Everything aligns to that. So the one thing that most important part of loving ourselves is just like how we would want to love our children, to be most attentive to ourselves, meaning attentive to our thoughts, attentive to our behavioral patterns, attentive to the words that we speak, attentive to inadvertent actions that we take or impulsive, whatever it is, and go, oh, why did I just say that? Why did I use that word for that particular thing? Why am I always responding or reacting this
Mm-hmm.
way about this type of behavior? That attentiveness in and of itself is already self-love in motion.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of clients that come to me to tell me what they don't want in their life and what they don't like in their relationship. But when I say, what is it that you really want? What do you want? And what do you like? I mean, not even what you love, but let's just talk about what you like. It's actually more challenging of a question to answer than it
Mm-hmm.
sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is because, well, many old souls still come with this martyr paradigm where they still believe that they need to suffer or they need to sacrifice their own needs for the sake of other people's happiness, or they're just so consumed in their chaos and wounds and traumas and programming or conditioning that they've adopted, and their authenticity is so deep buried under that rubble that they just can't seem to find their own voice, whatever it may be. you know Really, self-love is really just about uncovering a lot of things. I always think that we're not really learning, but we're just remembering who we
Mm-hmm.
really are.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the first step is to be attentive to yourself, which is probably why a lot of the esoteric and spiritual practices often center around meditation, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the one place where you can only be attentive to yourself. And even when we say, oh, but I have hard time staying still, I have hard time wiping off my thoughts. And I always say, no, but if you're paying attention to the thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
that's still very meditative,
Mm-hmm.
because you're not the thoughts. If you're hearing your thoughts, then who's the one that's listening to those thoughts?
Right.
And and so that's another way to practice take step toward self-love,
Mm-hmm. And
I
I
would
think
say.
there are steps in helping yourself be more attentive too, right? Like
Yes.
for me, it
Mm-hmm.
was really hard to just close my eyes and just be in silence for a long time. Like I'm like I can't do that. But I got to it eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it starts with like what's something that can really grab my attention that I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to be just focused on the nonstop chatter in my mind. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
sitting outside and like watching a bug fly from one blade of grass to another. It's like, okay, I can't just be with myself, but I can watch the bug, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then the next step maybe is like, can you listen to something and close your eyes and there's words playing? And then
Yes.
another step is like, okay, no, let's try a few less words. And then
Mm.
you can kind of train yourself to be more attentive
Yes.
too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the idea of training in and of itself already is something that a lot of people aren't even able to bring themselves to do. But yes, you're right. I mean, we don't realize that even as we grow up, we're always being trained in one way or
Mhm.
another. And, it's interesting that training ourselves is actually the most challenging thing to do. But yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, and it's just recognizing that there's nothing in you that is permanent. Yes, we have
Mhm.
we have come with some sense of a blueprint, a unique design of our own.
Mhm.
But what we think personality is actually loaded with conditioned ways and not necessarily our true way. And so, yeah, I mean, retraining, reprogramming ourselves is actually not that hard. And it is definitely the way for us to be able to uncover underneath all of that who we really
Yes, absolutely. And so, how, in your experience with your clients, how can we begin to understand the idea of unconditional love for ourselves, but how do we turn that into an embodiment? How is that something we really like take take on and begin to integrate for ourselves, because there's definitely a difference between understanding the concept of unconditional self-love and then beginning that path of actually having it.
Absolutely. That's a profound question. I think that even when we talk about the awakening of consciousness, there are actually two different awakening stages. One, a mind awakening, and another that is an embodiment awakening. It's one thing to know about something and to talk about something, but to be that thing that you speak, to embody it, so that even when you're not speaking a word of it, you are glowing with those values that you speak of. And what is the main first step for me? For me, it was the detachment was definitely the first thing. Like just practicing the art of detachment, because detachment in and of itself includes practice like acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I always saw that any healing of any type of trauma has to start with an acceptance that that experience was for you.
Mm.
Any resistance that it was put on you, that it was someone else's decision for me to, in other words, a victim narrative,
Mm-hmm.
will stop the healing, right? So
Right.
to accept what is as what needed to be, as long as I experience it, as long as I am who I am, there is some kind of reason and substance behind it. And that acceptance will be the only thing that will allow the access to any insight as to why that is. Why did I go through that? Why am I always doing this? Why am I always mad about this? Or whatever it is, the acceptance, first and foremost, that there is a reason. And with that, I accept without even understanding why. First and foremost, I accept.
Mm.
That releases the judgment,
Mm.
because the judgment is the resistant energy. It's saying it has to be this or that. It's conclusive. It limits
Yes.
itself right away. And this world is made of black and whites, like good and bad, positive and negative. I want positive, but I don't want negative. But
Mm-hmm.
then positive cannot be positive without negative.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Light cannot be recognized as light until we see some kind of shade. Then we see what light really is, the value of light. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, the shadow holds equal value to the light. When we accept that, then we stand in the middle between the good and bad, or positive and negative, or light and shade. And when we are in that state of acceptance, automatically the next thing, the next step, or what we need to see, what we need to understand, they naturally flow into us.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Mm.
like something like diet, for example, right? Instead of being rigid to vegan, because yes, it is true, vegetarian, vegan diet is a very high vibrational way,
Mm-hmm.
but our body is still holds a lot of different elements. And sometimes our body will want animal protein,
Mm-hmm.
and so to have a conclusive idea of how we must eat, again, already creates this limitation
Mm-hmm.
and blocks the access to a further or expansive insight. And
Mm.
so the idea of letting go of limitation by having acceptance to all things. I remember
Mm-hmm.
when I was beginning this journey, I read somewhere about, hold this mantra for yourself. I am open to anything and attached to nothing. And
Mm.
I just went with that because I love simple things. And
Yes.
so I just used that anytime and I had a conflict, or I hit a wall or anything, I just step back and I say, I'm open to anything and attached to nothing. I'm open to anything attached to nothing. And as I repeat that, it started to make things a little softer, and I started to become less tense. and I started to be easy on myself. And I started to feel like I was seeing what I really needed to see and understand what I really needed to understand. So I think the power of acceptance is so much a part of the quality of unconditional. You
Yes.
know, like comfort, same thing. Like we really underestimate or undervalue the power of comfort. When you're comfortable with someone,
Mm-hmm.
that's already the presence of unconditional love right there.
Mm.
Because you can be yourself. That's comfort,
Yes.
right? When you're comfortable with the decision that you make, that's there's an unconditional love there.
Mm-hmm.
When you release that sense of needing to be right or wrong, then you go with what you feel and you go, okay, I may not like the outcome of what I just chose to do, but I accept it because the comfort is the one thing that I felt when I made that decision.
Mm.
And with it, you feel this sense of greater force that says, yeah, try it. Go there. Who cares what the outcome is? Let's just
Mm-hmm.
do it because you get to experience the outcome, and that
Mm.
experience in and of itself is the value. Then that's unconditional love right there too. So
Yes.
unconditional love in and of itself, I remember telling the client, like, hey, get back to that unconditional love for yourself. And I
Mm.
remember that client looking at me like this dumbfounded look, like, unconditional love, isn't that like the realm of like something sacred and like God? And I go,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. That's who you are. And it's not unattainable. The moment you said, oh, I really want it to be this way. Wait a minute. Let me just take a step back. Let me just look at it objectively. Already you're in the state of unconditional love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But how can we be most objective to ourselves?
Mm. I can see that when we're in absolute acceptance of what is, in a way that is the unconditional love, you're in the place where you can experience the unconditional love. Then, like you said, all the colors kind of mute. Everything isn't so compartmentalized all of a sudden. And that's actually really scary at first because we're not used to that feeling, right? It's like
Mhm.
there's no safety net, and we're not sure where to go, but that's actually the pathway to being able to connect to that inner divinity and to go,
Mhm.
I am not just this one thing or this one thing. I am actually all things and everyone, and I am no one, right? Both.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
And the other thing, yes, absolutely. And the other thing that I think we can pay attention to guide us through to become unconditional in love with ourselves is joy.
Mm.
I think that I always explain this, like, happiness is a choice, right? Like, you
Mm.
can look at a glass and you go, you know what, this glass is half empty, but it's also half full. And with that choice, because they're both real, and with the choice that we make on the positive polarity, which is the happiness, we get to experience the outcome that that particular choice holds,
Mm-hmm.
cause and effect. But joy is not a choice; it's a phenomenon. It only happens when we are in sync with who we really are in what I call the divine blueprint.
Mm.
So any sparks of joy, interest, curiosity, of course, passion, excitement is also part of honoring that joy, is also part of that unconditional. So again, a very selfish choice, really, in a way.
Mm.
But the great thing about choosing to love yourself unconditionally is that you can't go wrong. You cannot be more of a service to
Mm.
others by loving
Right.
yourself the most.
Right. It's
Because
only
when
going to
you're
help you.
authentic, yeah, when you're honest and authentic to yourself and you love yourself first, that's the first time you're giving everybody else the chance to choose if they like
Mm.
you or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you're
Mm-hmm.
giving them the real chance to say, this is
Mm.
who I really am. First and foremost, I accept and fully, doesn't matter, there's no such thing as perfect, light and shade.
Mm,
boldly. They're both real, and I embrace both my light and shade.
mm.
Now look at me and tell me what you think. Oh, well, I love your light and I learn from your shade. Then there's synergy, there's resonance. But if they say, you know what, your light is not the kind of light I like because I
Mhm.
like that color of light. Well, that's wonderful. Very nice to meet you. No harm, no foul, right? Just
Yeah,
I honor your what you love. Your the beauty that you behold doesn't have to be me, and
right.
therefore, you know, we honor each other and there's no hard feelings there.
Yes.
So I think that that's honoring your joy again will always guide you to arrive to your a state of unconditional love.
Mm, beautiful. Shiro, I feel like the time somehow is in a different dimension when we're talking. It's like 5 minutes and it's
We can't
already an
stop.
episode. I know.
You know, with our conversation, we can,
Oh my gosh.
go down the rabbit hole of all kinds of stuff. But right now, has been the prominent theme in my life. It is the one thing that I feel like the world also is indicating the need of is love, right? Like Stevie Wonder sings, like love is in need of love today. And
Mm,
because even the spiritual community can get caught up in the knowing or the knowledge and also the mysteries of the universe, and of course
mhm,
abilities like intuitive abilities and modalities and things like that. And I always
mhm.
go, you know what, why aren't we just talking about unconditional love, like
Right.
love? And that is the source of all that we all want for ourselves, and what's right for us will all naturally flow into us if we can just center ourselves in just that. Let's keep it simple. Like John Lennon, right? Love is real and real is love. Like love is reflecting in all things. And if we can center ourselves in love, then everything else really is just the icing on the cake. And if we
Yes.
don't have love, then everything else that's wonderful and glittery and everything is just gold plated, fake, or it's just, you know, a surface without substance.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, there's a lot of people in the world right now who also have, we were talking about this like attachment versus non-attachment. And I think we have a lot of people coming from a place of the intention of love.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming at, like you said, it is love. They're coming from a place of love, but they want to use that love to fight against
Mm-hmm.
something, which they don't realize
Mm-hmm.
is this idea of pendulums and thought forms and things is we're
Mm-hmm.
actually just supporting the energy that's going towards the thing that we're fighting against. And
Right.
so again, if we can bring it back home and bring it back inwards and find that connection to the non-attachment love, loving just for the sake of loving, of seeing what is
Mm-hmm.
and accepting it as it is, then
Mm-hmm.
we begin to integrate the ability to do that with what we're seeing in our external world, would you say?
I would say so, absolutely. As we talked about this, I think that it might trigger some questions about love being sort of this passive thing.
Right.
If we were to say that fighting is not the answer, yes, fighting even with the love, when we fight something, it comes with an agenda of our own. It is
Hmm.
it is a resistant force, and what we resist persists.
Hmm.
War on drugs doesn't work because we're not promoting health, and as long as we're not promoting health, resisting drugs doesn't work. And it's the same
Mm.
principle here. And what we mean when we talk about loving ourselves first, it doesn't mean that we just become passive to what's happening around us. It's not passive and it's not aggressive, it's assertive. And when we come to our own sense of authentic love for ourselves, we are not passive and we're not aggressive. We become assertive. We become creative, promoting the value that we love and appreciate first.
Mm.
And so I remember someone saying, somebody asked, I don't know if this is true, but the principle of the story is really profound. Somebody asked Mother Teresa, would you march for anti-war march? And she said,
Right.
no. But
Mm-hmm.
if there is a pro-peace march, I will march for that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what John Lennon did. Is to
Mm-hmm.
make love and not war. All of this is because that's actually the most powerful force
Yes.
without actually fighting, but it is the thing that will fight for us.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, when we lead with love, when we must, when it's right, when it's appropriate for us to speak up,
Yes.
when we are to redirect somebody to a different direction, or to, for lack of better words, express our boundaries, if that is even necessary, which I don't really like to use the word,
Mm-hmm.
the assertive voice will dictate from that love. And when we come from that, our self love, the energy behind whatever we're saying will not be abrasive, and it doesn't have to come
Mm-hmm.
with a resistant force. It honors the other person. It honors
Mm-hmm.
that enemy that we supposedly are going to fight. We become louder with our own value. That's all.
Yes. Thank you so much for speaking on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shiro,
Absolutely.
I hope that you'll come back and visit us on Star Potential again because, oh my goodness, we have so many areas that we could go
Oh
into.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I agree with you that love was the way to go on this
Hmm.
first introduction here. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your
Thank you.
thoughts with
Thank you
us.
very much. It's been an honor. And again, I'm always enjoying your podcast. I love the episode you did with Bronislav. That was so amazing. And I and
Oh,
I
thank you.
love his voice, by the way. He's got an
I
amazing voice,
know.
such a great healing voice. So please give him my love,
I
and
will.
I'm always cheering for you. So keep going
Uh,
with your beautiful podcast.
Thank you. And before we go, Cheryl, I would just like to give our listeners a
Hmm.
little chance to get to know some fun things about you. So let's shake it up a
Absolutely.
little. I'm going to fire
Yeah,
some
let's do it.
questions at you.
Shoot
Tell
away.
us, Shiro, tell us as a kid, what did you always want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a pilot.
A pilot. I did not see that
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah, I wanted to be a pilot because, well, it is really primarily because my mother always loved to travel, and
Uh-huh.
I loved my mother, and I just always wanted
Aw.
to, take her some. And I think the idea of taking people, entertaining people, hosting people,
Mm,
is probably where that idea came from. But
yeah.
yeah, that when I spoke it out loud, it came out as pilot.
Yes. Aw.
And I do have interest in flying still. Yes,
Yeah, that's great. Which season of the year makes you feel most alive?
springtime.
Springtime.
Yeah, I
Birds
think that
renewal.
the warmth and the freshness of the new life sprouting. I can feel my own self having a sense of a cycle of renewal. It is the most exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
Although a lot of great events and fun times take place in summertime. And actually, I actually prefer, uh, winter versus summer,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, and I've changed over the years, but I do enjoy the hibernation, and just going, like, really covering myself up, and just kind of staying more still, or slowing down and staying at home, kind of thing, is actually more of an enjoyment than going out there and have fun right now. So it could be just a phase of mine, but I would say spring for the
Mm.
universal,
Mm.
like.
But I feel like winter is kind of the balance of spring too, right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah. I mean,
you have that dormant
it's the
time.
yeah, hibernation. It's
Yeah.
the preparation for the new. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, this is a fun one for you. If you had a
Okay.
theme song for every time you made an entrance, what would it be?
Mm-hmm. Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. I
Yeah.
love it.
You know that the beginning piano, doo dun 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 da 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 dun 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 dun.
Oh,
That is
yeah. It's been a
every time
while.
I
I had
hear
to
that
stop and think.
music. Yeah, every time I hear that music, it I feel something. I love that movie so much,
Oh,
and
I love
I
that.
always loved the character that Forrest represented. And there's
Uh-huh.
so much of the principle of life that I inspire after. But that theme song is what puts me in a state of like that's who I am kind of feeling. So that's yeah, I choose that one.
Yes. Yes, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Finish this sentence. When I'm
Okay.
80, I'll be.
Happy and at
Oh,
peace.
I'm just hanging on to that vision with you. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm. Favorite dessert.
Ooh, that's an interesting one because I don't really do desserts.
Or tell us
Um,
your favorite treat. What's your,
but you
you
know
know?
what? I went to this restaurant in Manhattan Beach and they had this chocolate cheesecake and it was this beautiful, delicate, not too sweet at all, delicate balance of the cheesecake, the sort of the tangy
Uh-huh.
cheese flavor with the chocolate mousse.
Mm.
That was the one time I devoured that whole dessert. And I would say
Oh,
that that will be now my favorite dessert.
interesting. So you like a
Yeah,
little savory in your sweet.
it's at this restaurant called Petros. Kind of plugging my friend's restaurant, but it's a
Perfect.
Greek restaurant, and it's a chocolate cheesecake. It's not always available,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, that would be my favorite.
Well, I'll certainly have to try that now.
Yeah,
And what is a book you would recommend for everyone to read?
I think the one book that really captures a lot is there's a book by Deepak Chopra called Creating Affluence. And
Mm.
it's very simple, very thin. I'm not a great reader. I mean,
I
I have
remember that
read,
books are not your
huh?
favorite thing.
Yeah, I'm a very visual and audio
Yes.
person, but that was a very simple, and he does everything alphabetical, A to Z, and what
Oh.
each letter represents.
Uh-huh.
And it captures all of the essence of life that I hold dear. And it's just, I always think like, if there's one book that anybody can just have as sort of, I guess, for lack of better words, a Bible of their life,
Sure.
that will be a very good book. But obviously there's some amazing authors out there, and I can go through that. But yeah, one that comes stands out that I can definitely speak out loud about is that Creating Affluence by Deepak Chopra.
Love it. I've never heard of that one, so I'm
Yeah,
definitely putting that on my to be read list.
yes, absolutely.
Oh, Shiro, it's always a pleasure to share a space with you, whether it's on a stage or via a computer screen or in the room. So thank you so much for being here on Star Potential and always sending you all my love.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having me. It was an honor. And again, blessings to you. Thank you very much.
What a great conversation with Shiro today. Let's go over some of the key takeaways from today's conversation. I think our overarching message here was that unconditional love for ourselves is all that matters in the grand scheme of things. And once we can begin to step into and to embody that, then you will see how your relationships change, how the events that happen in your life that are happening for you, you'll begin to see them with perspective once you realize that everything starts and ends with unconditional love for yourself. So, to begin to do this, we must be attentive to ourselves, to our thoughts, to the way that we are viewing things. Is the glass half empty or half full? Are you always looking at the question of what lesson is being offered to me right now? We recognize that there is nothing in us that is permanent. We recognize love is reflecting in all things. We went over 3 operating systems of belief or understanding of operations, right? So, 1, a purely materialistic view, 2, a religious viewpoint, or 3, a self empowered creator's view. And we discussed how there is a varying scale of degrees among these 3 operating systems as well. We talked about self-love and meditation, how they go hand in hand. The question we ask ourselves, if you're hearing your thoughts, then who is the one that is listening to those thoughts? There must be an awareness there, right? And so each time you start to get lost in the thoughts, you can take one step back and realize you're the one watching those thoughts. And then when you start having judgment of those thoughts, you take another step back and realize you're the one being aware that there's judgment of those thoughts that you're watching. You see how you can just keep stepping back, and this increases your self-awareness. This is helping you to embody unconditional love when we can be the observer of all, not lost in it. To begin embodying unconditional love, we must practice detachment. And that is how we're doing that. And the next step would be acceptance of what is. Accepting that life occurrences are happening for you with some reason. We must accept that, even if we can't yet understand what that reason could be. Otherwise, we are just stuck in resistance mode, and no healing, no love can begin while we're stuck in that resistance mode. This was one of my favorite takeaways. We all have light and shadow, and both are necessary. Light cannot be recognized until we see some kind of shade, so they both hold equal value. And only when you reveal both your light and shadow do you really give others a chance to decide if they like you or not. Isn't that interesting? Next, all begins and ends with love. If we don't have love, then everything that seems shiny and wonderful is just fake. We talked about love being neither passive nor aggressive, but it allows you to be assertive in who you are, what is your intention. And fighting something in the name of love is still resistance. Only when we assert love in everything can we truly be able to evolve to that higher place of consciousness. Only love can appreciate the dark and the light. And when we try to fight things in the name of love, we're coming with a resistant energy. It's coming from lack. That's not coming from unconditional love. That's that attachment that we talked about. Coming at something with an agenda is not unconditional love. Next, we draw into our awareness the people and events that will help us to learn something from our current level of awareness. In Shiro's words, nothing enters our reality without resonance. So if it has been attracted to you, there is something that it offers you in the form of a lesson. Realize and say to yourself, I am the one attracting these experiences to myself. Here's a quote from Shiro I loved. When we become detached from the thing that we love, we become the objective observer of it. The question isn't, what do I want it to be? But it becomes, what does it most need? Or what is the best for it? Or him, her, if we're talking about a person, right? And lastly, honoring your joy will always guide you to arrive to your state of unconditional love. Let joy be your guide. Shiro said happiness is a choice, but joy is a phenomena. I can't wait to hear what are your key takeaways from today. Let us know what was an aha moment for you or something that clicked. You can leave it in the comments of some of our platforms like Spotify and YouTube. You can send me a direct message on Instagram. You can, if you scroll down in the show notes, there's a little link that says send me a text. You can send me a note that way as well. And we have a Facebook group called Star Potential Galaxy where you can join us in conversation there where we dive a little deeper on a personal level, an invitation to do so. I asked Shiro where we can get in touch with him so that wherever you are in the world, you can connect with him and get deeper insights on your own personal journey. And here is Shiro in his own words with that information. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie, for having me on Star Potential Podcast. And thank you to everyone that listened to this episode. My name is Shiro Nobunaga, and I am an intuitive counselor for a service called Guided Solution. And I specialize in connecting with your subconscious and helping to retrieve the highest potential story of yours, and also to help you align your path with wisdom. If you are interested, please reach out if you have a question or if you like to book a session. You can reach me at guidedsolution.com, and that is GUIDED-SOUL-UTION.com. And there will be contact information for me as well. Please feel free to visit me anytime. Thank you once again.
Thank you for tuning into Star Potential with Julie Jo Hughes. If this episode resonates with you, I invite you to take 2 seconds, scroll down, and click 5 stars on the rating. It's a fast and easy way to help the show gain exposure and momentum. If you're loving the show, I invite you to leave a quick review about what you love. Reviews are like gold to podcasters. And to show my gratitude, you'll be entered to win my monthly giveaway when you send me a screenshot of your review. I also made you a gift. It's a 9-minute, simple gratitude meditation with singing to help you practice mindfulness. Just visit me on Instagram at @TheJulieJo or find the link in the show notes. Thank you for your love and support. Until next time, keep shining your light. And that's a wrap.